It's been a while since I've put together a video for the YouTube community because I have been on several back-to-back workshops over the last 2 months, from Namibia to the Richtersveld to the Drakensberg and then back again to Namibia. So I thought it would be a useful place to start with what do you pack when you're traveling to Namibia, because I am going to be running several workshops there next year and another one again in November. If you'd like to know more about these workshops, you can take a look at the Nature's Light website, which has all of the workshop locations that I travel to. Now, it's a regular email that I end up writing to the various photographers who join me on these workshops on basically what do you pack when you're traveling for a 2-week journey through Namibia. So I'm kind of cheating over here by putting this out on YouTube instead of just sending them the email, because now, of course, I might just send them this particular link. I'm going to divide this video into 2 sections. The first is going to be the basic packing list, what goes into my great big bag that goes into the hold of the aircraft, and the second part is going to be what do you take as a photographer in terms of the equipment that you're going to be carrying. I'm going to start with the actual luggage that I use, and I really like my Osprey 90 transporter, which is a rolling semi-soft case which I've had for several years now and takes an absolute ton of abuse. It packs just about everything that I need it to and is about the right size that I can manhandle it through airports without having to use a trolley, as well as being able to get it into vehicles or across uneven terrain. Now, that's important about this particular bag, is that it has oversized wheels. So you can actually drag it across wet grass, sand, gravel. It's fantastic. I'm able to use it as an almost 4-wheel drive luggage, which is really good. The other important thing about it is that I don't necessarily overpack it, because the bigger the bag, the more likely you're going to put too much stuff inside there. When you're traveling to Namibia, you need to be aware of the fact that if you're using local airlines like SA Airlink or FlySafair or any of the other local airlines in Namibia or South Africa or Southern Africa, there's a very good chance that you're only going to have a maximum luggage capacity of 20 kilograms in the hold, if you don't want to book a second bag, which can start getting expensive. So you need to make sure that everything inside your main hold bag is going to be under 20 kilograms. So getting into that, this is what goes into my bag. Now, I pack everything in cubes. This allows me to basically organize my clothing as I go through the trip. So I've got my trousers, my shirts, my overclothes, everything neatly organized and compartmentalized so that I can live outside of my bag for 2 weeks, which is actually not that easy without making a huge big mess. And this allows me to repack or pack my bag in a couple of minutes if we are transferring between locations. In terms of the kind of clothing that you're going to need for when you're in Namibia, look for neutral colored shirts. Long shirts and short sleeve shirts are a good idea. Long sleeves so that you can actually keep some of the sun off of you. The colors need to be neutral, particularly if you're going to be doing safaris. So if you're going to somewhere like Etosha or Ongava or Onguma nature reserves, then you're going to need to wear something that isn't garish and bright, because of course you do need kind of neutral toned shirts. Something else to be aware of if you're going up north towards the Caprivi or into Angola or Zambia is that you really should avoid dark blue shirts or black shirts, for the simple fact that tsetse flies are actually attracted to that particular color. So again, neutral colored shirts work really well. Some lightweight t-shirts perhaps, long pants of a quick dry kind of material so that they dry quickly if you're going to be washing them yourself. Rather than going into full detail around that kind of stuff, I will put a link to a PDF packing list in the comments section below so that you can just download that and you can get a quick checkbox list of the things that you would like to pack for a Namibian photography workshop. However, before dropping out of that, do remember to take warm clothes as well. When you're photographing along the Atlantic seaboard in places like Luderitz or Swakopmund, it does get cold, even in summer. So make sure that you've got a fleece or a puffer inside there. And surprisingly enough, you should have a windbreaker or rain jacket. This is particularly the case if you're traveling in April or November, because there are potential rain showers in the middle of the desert, extraordinarily enough. And more than that, though, is a rain jacket also makes for a really good windbreaker if you're going to be out photographing, for instance, pelicans in flight on one of the boat cruises near Swakopmund. So that is the clothing that I take when I am traveling, and it's obviously all packed up inside these little cubes or little bags. The next thing that I carry is another sort of semi-hard case bag like this, and inside that I've got all of my bits and pieces, my chargers, some of the cables, my repair kit, and a couple of other things. So just to go through that, you are going to want to keep with you a cleaning kit. So this is the stuff that I always carry with me. You can take a look at this video that I recently put out on how to clean your camera, because of course when you're in the middle of the Namibian desert and you get a bit of dust on your sensor, you can't just send it into a store to have it cleaned. You're going to have to clean it yourself. So these kind of things are really important to carry with you. The next thing that I always carry with me, which is kind of odd that some people don't realize, is a paintbrush. This is a soft-tipped nylon paintbrush, and it is extraordinarily important for cleaning your tripods, because you can get this into all the little bits and pieces and get all of that Namibian desert sand out of your crevices inside your tripod or on your camera itself. So it is useful having a little paintbrush with you when you are actually traveling. Also included in that kit, I have my repair kit, which is basically going to consist of a Leatherman, a couple of screwdrivers, an extra Allen key, super glue. This is also very important, and it's amazing how many times I've had to repair things with just a little bit of super glue. So make sure you've got a very, very basic kit with you. I usually also include a little bit of duct tape inside there, or gaffer tape, so that I can just tape things up if they break. Also inside that semi-hard case, I have my multi-power adapter. Now this is quite important if you're going to be traveling, because not all countries that you go to have the same kind of plugs. So you need to make sure that you're going to be able to charge your equipment when you're out in Namibia. Now, for those who are traveling from Europe or the United States, or Asia for that matter, Namibia and most of the southern African countries all use the same plug types, which is plug type M, which is this round-shaped plug that is earthed, or at least it's usually earthed. This is actually an adapter that I have in my hand over here. All places that you travel to are going to have this particular plug type. So you need to make sure that you have an adapter for that. Don't stress though if you can't find that adapter, because most people end up having one of these multi-adapters like this one, and these usually have the Euro type plug C. Okay, so that's that 2-pin adapter that you usually find in Europe and many other parts of Asia, and are very easily adapted. Most multi-plugs have this type C on them. Now, if you can't get the plug type M when you are traveling, don't stress, it's not a problem. You can buy these for very, very little at most grocery stores within Namibia and in South Africa as well. And the good news over there is that you just need that, and then your Euro type plug C will go into it. Okay, so make sure that you have some kind of multi-adapter when you're traveling, as well as the ability to plug into a type M plug. For that matter though, most hotels and guest houses that you are likely to be using within Namibia are going to have Euro plug type C ports. If they don't, they will have this type M port. So that should be fine for power. Now, out of interest, Namibia uses a 220 volt system, as with this, which puts out about a 15 hertz power. So there you go, those are the adapters. And as long as you've got something like this with you, you're not going to fry your electronics. The next bag that I usually carry with me is this little guy, and this is basically just my cable organizer, as well as where I keep my Wacom mini tablet, or Wacom small tablet, because I can't live without my Wacom. So this also travels with me either inside my Osprey or inside my actual carry-on bag, which happens to be an f-stop Tillipper. I'll get onto that in a moment. But inside this, I'll have all of the necessary cables, USB-C, USB 2, and the various other kind of things that I need to have to create my connections and charge things like my watch and my phone, etc., etc. Something also not to forget is your small first aid kit. Yes, although you're traveling to Namibia with a photography group like the ones that I lead, and there should be a first aid kit, you should probably think about bringing your own medications and a few small bits and bobs like Tylenol or painkiller or your Imodium or things for diarrhea, etc., etc. The reason being that legally it is very difficult for a tour operator or a photography instructor to be able to give you medication if you have a bad tummy or if you have a headache. So make sure you've got a couple of those small things for yourself in your own first aid kit. Obviously, toiletries, because most of the places that you're going to travel to do potentially have things like shampoo and soap and so on. It's a good idea to keep your own, and of course you do need to bring your own toothpaste and that kind of stuff. Then I also bring a small f-stop insert, or the small ICU cube from f-stop. Now the reason I bring this is I can put this inside my Osprey bag, and I can put certain delicate items inside there that I don't necessarily want to take into my carry-on baggage. So every now and again, if I've got a lens that I'm prepared to risk putting into my actual hold carriage, I'll put it there. I'll put things like gimbal heads, tripod heads, bits and pieces that are too heavy to take onto the plane, but there's no problem putting them inside the actual hold. So that's the first reason why the f-stop bag goes inside, or the f-stop insert goes inside my Osprey bag. The second reason is that I like having a small cube available for sorting out gear inside the vehicles when we are traveling. Now that's one of the reasons I really like the cube system from f-stop gear, because it allows me to keep a small bag in the vehicle when we're traveling, so that I've got access to, for instance, a camera and a lens at any moment without having to pull out the entire camera bag. The other reason is that when I am then on game drive, for instance, I can take the large insert that I usually use and I can put that on a seat next to me inside a game viewer and have all the equipment inside there. So it makes sense carrying multiple ICUs when you are traveling, because you can organize your kit quite nicely between when you're traveling and when you're shooting. Next thing up is going to be sandals. Now, a lot of travelers come down to Namibia and they say, well, we want to bring boots and we want to have multiple pairs of shoes. The pair of shoes that you're likely to live in is actually going to be a pair of sandals, which I think they refer to almost colloquially in the United States as Tevas, and as well in the UK and Europe. These kind of shoes you'll find yourself using all the time, whether you're photographing on rocks, whether you're traveling, whether you are... Namibia's hot, so you don't necessarily want to be wearing boots the whole time. I personally prefer wearing something called velskoene, which is a South African kind of shoe, which is a low-cut leather shoe for when I'm walking in the desert or on rocks, but you can basically consider wearing something like light hiking shoes or boots to be able to do some of the more strenuous scrambles. I do recommend having a decent pair of shoes though when you are walking around, for instance, places like Keetmanshoop and photographing the quiver trees, because you're going to be on basically a kind of bouldery-like terrain. So you're going to need something that's going to give you a little bit of stability when you're walking over loose shale, loose rocks, and sand as well. But for the most part, as I say, I live in those sandals. They're comfortable, they're cool, they work really, really well, they've got lots of grip, and they are lightweight, so it's a worthwhile thing to stick inside your bag. Then, and this is kind of important if you are a serious photographer, is this little backup tripod. Now I always recommend especially if you're bringing two cameras, I recommend bringing a second tripod. This is my very, very lightweight Leofoto Ranger LS224C. So this thing weighs less than a kilogram, but it is stable enough that I've been able to put a Nikon D850 with a wide angle lens on it to be able to have a second rig when I'm photographing astrophotography. So I absolutely recommend bringing a super lightweight tripod. I have used other lightweight tripods in the past. There are several excellent brands out there. There are some very lightweight tripods available. Also going into my Osprey bag when I'm actually traveling and still keeping it under 20 kilograms, amazingly enough. And the reason you don't see it in this little B-roll video is because it was actually filming, is my Leofoto Ranger CEX LS324 tripod. So this has a leveling head on it, which is fantastic. So it means that I can do panoramics very easily. So this tripod also manages to fit inside my Osprey, and there's still space, which is incredible. That's basically what goes into my bag, along with, of course, a pair of running shoes because I'm a runner, and various other little bits and pieces if you desperately need them. But that is basically the kit that I travel with for a 2.5 to 3 week journey through Namibia. One thing I haven't mentioned though, which is really silly of me, always bring a hat and sunscreen. That's super important, but again, that's going to be in the packing list, which I'm going to put down in the links below. Okay, so now we move on to the bit that most people are actually interested in, and that is the camera kit that you are going to be bringing with you when you travel to Namibia. Although for the most part, this actually makes sense for pretty much any kind of workshop that I lead. First off, I always carry 2 cameras, not one, because it would be an absolute disaster if you spend all this money to go to some place far on the edge of the world and then suddenly one breaks, or you drop it, or it's stolen, or it gets rained on, or it just doesn't work. It makes sense to have a backup, which is why I always carry two cameras. On this particular trip, I had my Nikon Z7 as well as a Nikon D850. I have not yet had the opportunity to upgrade all of my equipment to mirrorless, so I have one mirrorless camera and one DSLR camera. The good news between both of these is they're basically the same sensor, so I can effectively use them interchangeably if I want to. The range of lenses that you're going to need if you're shooting in Namibia is you're going to want everything from a super wide, so this is a Tamron 16 to 30mm f2.8, a mid-range zoom, so I've got the Nikon 24 to 70mm lens. This is a super important lens, a 70 to 200mm, although you can also get away with a 70 to 300mm lens, and that's basically it. That's all you really need to be able to get the most out of photographing in Namibia. If you're going to be doing any wildlife photography though, I would highly recommend bringing along a super zoom or a full-on super telephoto if you can afford it. In my case, I was using the venerable 200 to 500mm f5.6 lens. This is a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde lens because it kind of sometimes sharp and then sometimes not. But it is, for value for money, one of those lenses that's just hard to beat. There's a whole range of lenses out there that you can actually consider though. Essentially, you need a range from around 16mm through to 400mm if you're doing everything from landscape and astrophotography through to wildlife photography. Now on the former, the astrophotography, the important part you need to consider is that if you are shooting with a wide-angle lens like this one, you're going to want a maximum aperture of around f2.8. If you can get an astro lens, so something like Sigma's f1.8 or f1.4 lenses, then great, wonderful, go for it. Those are going to give you better astro results if you're photographing the Milky Way over things like the quiver trees or over houses near Kolmanskorp in Luderitz. But the important thing is that anything smaller than f2.8 and you're going to struggle. It doesn't make it impossible. You can get away with f4 still with the right techniques and being able to create your photographs, but an f2.8 wide-angle lens is really useful. Now the lens that most people don't realize is so important though is the 70 to 200mm lens. Now I personally love the f4 version because it is about half the weight of the f2.8 and just as sharp. You'll find that this is a very versatile lens when you're photographing in Namibia because you'll use it to be able to create compression effect with your landscapes, whether you're shooting quiver trees, the trees in dead flay, roads leading off into the distance, even when you're photographing close-up wildlife like pelicans in flight, that lens is your go-to lens. And when I look at the actual metadata of the lenses that I'm using, the two lenses that get used the most are going to be my wide-angle 16 to 30 and my 70 to 200. I've even gone out on workshops before where we've done wildlife and we've actually gone to game reserves and I still haven't bothered bringing a larger super telephoto lens because the 70 to 200 is just so valuable. So if you're trying to keep things lightweight, just go for those two lenses, the 16 to 35 or thereabouts and a 70 to 200 or 70 to 300mm lens. The 24 to 70 is just a very useful grab lens. It's lightweight, it's relatively inexpensive if you're not using the f2.8 version, and it's worth just keeping around. I use it a lot, especially if I'm just doing a quick walkabout and I don't want to carry tons of equipment because it gives me a short telephoto for photographing things like portraits, but if I need to go wide, it also allows me to just stitch the photograph simply by taking multiple frames with it. So a 24 to 70, as long as it's not the f2.8 version, is nice and lightweight and easy to carry around with you. Then I also carry with me a set of filters. I personally use the Nisi JetMag filter system, but very importantly, you need to make sure that you've got a polarizer with you when you're photographing in the desert. Helps with skies, it helps with reflections in foliage, as well as reflective light sources of sand as well. So it's a useful filter to have. In fact, I'd say it's an almost essential filter to bring with you. And then I will also do things like blurring water and foliage and grass blowing in the wind by using neutral density filters. And I always carry a full set, so I've got a 3, 6 and a 10. It's not essential for everybody, but certainly I do like carrying my filter set with me. I even have a filter adapter so that I can use my graduated 100mm square filters with my system. Then, because I do a lot of panoramic photography, I also carry a nodal rail. This is incredibly important if you are wanting to get accurate panoramas. And you can take a look at this video, which basically explains how I use this rail to be able to get accurate panoramas, along with a leveling base on my tripod, which is why I carry the leveling ranger with me, and a L bracket on the edge of your camera. So both of the cameras that I carry have L brackets on them. Further to the equipment that I've mentioned, if your camera does not support long exposure intervalometer capturing, then you might need something like this little MEOPS trigger. You can also get super generic triggers as well, which allow you to take long exposure intervalometer timed images. Most of the modern day cameras, though, allow you to do this in camera, so this is becoming redundant and isn't even necessary anymore. I also like carrying with me a little light panel because rather than a big flash gun, not only is it nice and light, but it allows me to light up things like buildings, houses, and I can even use it as a little bit of fill light if I'm doing any video or as a little bit of portraiture photography along the way. And because it's the desert, make sure you've got this, which is a little blower to make sure that you can just get dust off your sensor. And also when you're doing lens changes, it's a good idea to just give it a quick squirt of air so that you can try and avoid getting some of the dust that is going to come into your sensor, because this is Namibia. It's a desert. It's like a great big kitty litter box. That, in a nutshell, is the equipment that I bring, which brings me to one final little trick. All of this kit is going to weigh more than you're really allowed to carry onto a plane. Now, most airlines that I've traveled with have been relatively lenient, because as soon as you open up your bag, they realize, wait, this is camera gear, and they don't actually want it in their hold. Particularly as a whole bunch of this stuff has got internal lithium-ion batteries, so they don't want that going in the hold. They want it as close as possible to you. So you're going to have to find a way to be able to carry that onto the plane without arousing suspicion. My little trick for this, which has worked in the past, is basically to bring a photographer's vest with me. So this either goes into the hold if I don't need it, or I put it on and I put all sorts of heavy stuff that is relatively small into my pockets. So things like my lithium-ion power bank for my phone, extra batteries for the camera, of which, remember, you need to have at least 4 of those batteries when you're traveling, because you can't always get access to charging, and again, if you're photographing at night, you're going to be chewing through those batteries. So all of those things get stuffed into my pockets, and a photographer's vest usually has big and deep enough pockets that you can even put some lenses inside there. So suddenly you can get your carry-on bag down to a manageable weight to be able to get it onto the airline. You're wearing some of that weight, admittedly, but that's okay according to the airline rules, which is incredible, actually. But it does work. So if you are struggling to get your gear onto the plane safely, bring a photographer's vest. You might not need it, but it is there as a backup just in case. I don't think I've left out anything over there, but as I say, I will put everything into a link so that you can actually read this as well. For the most part, though, this is my standard Namibia kit that I carry with me when I am traveling to Namibia leading photographic workshops, like the one I'm going to be leading in November. If I've missed anything, drop it into the comments below. Let me know what you think. Of course, if you've enjoyed the video, please remember to pop a like and a subscribe into the various blocks around the actual YouTube screen. I will be doing more of these in future, and again, and apologies for the gap between videos recently. When I'm on workshop, I'm on workshop. I don't do other stuff in the background. I'm with the photographers who are with me 100%. But I'm hoping to get a couple more videos out in the near future. Until then, though, happy shooting. Hope to see you again soon. Cheers.